Know the difference with Annex Wealth Management with Tom Parks, Director of Retirement Plan Services. Annex, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
Big fan of 401ks here. They can be humble. They can be lovable. How do you know if your particular 401k is good or bad? They're not all the same. Tom, I love our company 401k. It's pretty darn good, but I'd expect that.
I think it is too, Danny.
What about yours, folks? With 70 million Americans invested in 401ks, it's likely not all are all-stars. The problem? There's really no place for regular investors to go these days to see how their 401k compares to other plans. So it's harder to figure out how your 401k stacks up on things like size of matching contributions, quality of investment choices, fees, plan perks. Why is there no rating system?
Well, there used to be, Danny, there was this company called Brightscope that did rate 401k plans, but I think it's very difficult to rate a plan just because of all of the variables involved in it. So it's really something you got to do your homework on.
That leaves 401k research up to the consumer, and that's fine. But where do you start? Tommy, what's the best starting point?
Well, start by saving, for sure. But start with the plan that you're in and start asking questions. Collect the information that you have about the highlights of the plan. How does it work? What are the investments? And then from there, you can kind of start building a picture of how good is this thing as compared to some others you might have been in before.
Is the first thing that people look at the match?
That is the number one question that we get, Danny. When we're working with people, people always say, how much do I have to put in to get the match? I don't even know what the second question is because it's not even close. So yeah, for sure, that's something that you want to look at. But don't hang your hat on that completely as the end-all and be-all of whether it's a good plan or not.
And don't bail, folks, if it's skimpy or even non-existent for the match.
No, for sure. There's still 401ks have lots of great qualities without regard to whether there is a match involved, for sure.
How about investment choices? And I still think most of them, your eyes will cross. There's many investment choices.
Yeah, and sometimes this is one of those cases where more does not necessarily equal better. I think of going to a restaurant where you open up the menu and there are like 78 things to choose from. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this? And you can have a similar experience with 401k plans. So there are minimum requirements for categories being represented. For the most part, I think 401k plans, if you're in one, you're going to have access to the kind of investments that you need, but do not assume that more is better, I would say.
Where are you with index funds and 401ks?
Index funds are more and more kind of a standard in 401ks. There's a question of whether it's just the S&P 500, for example, or if they're going to expand it to other asset classes. We're big fans at Annex of including those in the lineup as part of a broad, diversified lineup. The key thing, though, I know we're going to talk about fees in a second, is that you got to start paying attention to the idea of an index fund is that you have a low-cost option. In some of these plans, you look at the thing and you're like, wait a second, this looks like it costs a little more than it should. So you do have to pay attention.
Tom Parks, Director of Retirement Plan Services at Annex Wealth Management, asking, do you have a good or a bad 401k? Best 401k accounts keep costs down. Is that through things like index funds?
Yeah, it's a lot of factors. There's administration, the advisory services, the investments themselves. And when it comes to the investments, there is an element, and actually I would say all of these services, of you get what you pay for. But obviously there are limits to that philosophy. So the key thing in this whole discussion, Danny, is that it is complicated. There are lots of layers that you're going to have to sift through to get this right.
Talk a little bit about vesting. Is that in every single plan?
Not necessarily. Just think of vesting as this. While you're in the plan, vesting doesn't matter. Vesting matters when you leave. And basically, it translates into how much of the money do I get to take with me? All of it or less. All of the money that you put in is always 100% vested because it's your money. Money that you get from the company may be subject to after this many years, you get to take this much, and the longer you stay, the more you take with, but not necessarily always. It's, again, plan by plan.
Let's talk about 401k fees because nothing is free.
That is correct, Danny. Anytime I talk to someone who's like, oh, no, actually, we don't have any fees on our plan, I'm like, oh, boy, you probably have real higher fees than average. So, I've kind of alluded to the different services that are available, lots of fingers in the pot in a 401k plan to keep them compliant, to keep them running, and to do the annual non-discrimination testing, all the stuff that most people don't have to think about in their plan. So you need to look. There is a required notice called the 404A5 participant disclosure. It is required to be distributed on an annual basis. It doesn't get into the weeds, but it does give you the broad idea of what your plan costs.
And if you haven't curled up with that in front of a crackling fireplace, you haven't lived yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say that.
Is your 401k plan good or bad? This segment is for employees, but employers might be asking the same question. After all, a 401k is a tool for attracting and retaining great employees. Tom, let's say a business owner, a CFO, an HR professional feels their current 401k maybe isn't up to snuff. Reach out to you, talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, you need to ask yourself, why are we offering this thing? What are we really trying to get out of it? I think for employees, when we talk about 401k plans, the one that you have is definitely better than nothing. I have not come across 401k plans where I'm like, oh my gosh, you'd be better off without this thing. Are there better plans than others? Absolutely. But when you're an employer looking to offer this to your employees, remember that it is an employee benefit and it has a purpose. Are you helping people prepare for retirement, getting them on more stable financial footing? And that's where all of the partners, I think Annex really plays a big role in that with our clients of helping your employees maximize the benefit.
Tom Parks, Director of Retirement Plan Services, Annex. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.